even if we took some grain of sand back to our little beach and we could implement something like bringing back tourism, changing the negative narrative to positive, a positive narrative about people who are so excited to come because we're doing something innovative. And by the way, look at this amazing beach and the amazing pier that they have and the great restaurants and the art that we have. Much like when I came to El Salvador, I've experienced all those things. So
Lana and Dom with us today, and yeah, we got some interesting stories. Dom was sharing just a little bit about the role his trip to El Salvador played in his journey, bringing Bitcoin adoption to some of the firefighters unions, and I think spread to other unions from there. And then we have Lana, who's the mayor of Santa Monica, and is going to be sharing about why they're kind of adopting Bitcoin there and kind of trying to replicate what's happened here in El Salvador with driving tourism and why she thinks it's going to benefit the city. So we've got a lot of things to cover. They came down for the conference, the Plan B conference, which just finished up yesterday. It was an amazing event. I mean, the event organizers were like stressed because they had sold way more tickets than they were anticipating. And I was getting hammered by people like, hey, I didn't get tickets. And so, but it was amazing. It's just so great to see the demand for people both internationally, but also the locals. It was like half the attendees were Salvadorans. So just seeing the moves Bitcoin's making here. But want to dive in first, hearing a little bit about your guys' backstory and how you got into Bitcoin and how you guys kind of became connected in your efforts. So Dom, you want to give a little bit of your history and where Bitcoin kind of came in?
Yeah. So originally from the Bay Area, ended up moving down to Los Angeles after college. My first run-in with Bitcoin, the one that we don't like to talk about because it's too painful. I just finished the training academy and finished like my 1 year probation as a firefighter. So I'm a 16-year firefighter. And of course, firefighters at the time, they're all in the stocks and telling you got to invest, So I go home and I start learning about stocks, and I see that like Sprint's down, and there's a big opportunity because Sprint's going to climb from the trenches. And so I put a little bit of money in Sprint. My roommate, who's playing Call of Duty at the time, I come out and I go, dude, stop the game. I'm like, I'm done, dude. I just hit it. Like I just made the investment of my lifetime. I'm gonna be retired soon. And he goes, what'd you do? And I go, I just put money in Sprint. Like that's it. You don't understand. This company's gonna come back. They're down and out, but like it's Sprint, And he goes, hey, you want a piece of advice? And I go, what? And he goes, sell that stock and put it in this thing called Bitcoin. And I say, what's Bitcoin? And he says, I don't know what it is. And I go, okay, you don't know what it is, but you're telling me to. And I'm like, well, he's a website developer. And he's like, I've been seeing it all over GitHub and these back channels, and they're talking about it. And I go, well, how much is it per share? And he's like, it's not a share. And I'm like, well, what is it? He's like, I told you, I don't know. I can't even really describe it. It's a coin. And I go, well, how much is it? And he goes, it's $10 for a Bitcoin. And I go, well, are you going to invest in it? And he's like, no, I have too many legal, like law school loans. And I go, dude, stop trying to get me on some scheme that you're not even going to put money in yourself. So that's strike one.
Yeah.
Luckily, strike two in 2017, I actually worked this conference at the Museum of Flying. I was like a fire safety officer for this large conference they had. And it was a 2-day thing. And I ended up talking to some Bitcoiners. And I remember my takeaway was,
hey guys, just a brief interruption. We'll get back to the exciting show here, but I just want to really ask a favor that you guys could make sure that you're subscribed if you're watching this on YouTube. If you are listening to this on a podcast, please take a second and review this. You know, you don't even have to write a lengthy review or anything at all. Just click the number of stars that you want to give us. It really helps us in the algorithms to make sure people are finding out about what's happening here. All right, back to the show.
I've never seen a group more convicted than this group of people. Lana compares it, she jokes around a lot and to Star Wars, you know, but my takeaway was this from this conference. These people, you will never convince them otherwise on their belief on Bitcoin. And I was like, I have to look into this thing. I heard it back then. I have to look into it. So that's the start of my journey. And then I was the president of our union, the Santa Monica Firefighters. And so when I finished my 10 years of service as a union leader, I started looking at the intersection of Bitcoin and workers and wage earners and unions. And I started writing and researching and trying to just like find where that sweet spot was. And the more I pushed that door in, the more it became evident that there was a huge parallel and intersection. And so that started my work in, you know, trying to educate and onboard unions and teach them about Bitcoin. And there's a key, very important trip to El Salvador that played a huge role in that, but I want to share some time here and not go on too long of a rant. So I know we'll get to that.
Well, I think that why don't you go ahead and share that? Because I think that happened before you connected with Lana, right?
Yeah, I met Lana through my work with the firefighters. She was a community, like very involved community leader. There was a vacancy on the council. Our friends in common, of course, were like, hey, there's a woman running, you know, who could be a good fit. She's awesome. You know, you guys, like, you'll think she's amazing. And of course, she is amazing. And we, you know, when we met, it became evident, I think in our first conversation, I was like, this would be a great person on the council, an incredible leader. So we did whatever we could to support her along.
Oh, so this was pre like Bitcoin being involved. You were just okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Our first interactions were just as, you know, I was already starting to go down my path on Bitcoin, but you know, that wasn't like that we met just in her getting on council.
Okay.
And so
what year was that?
21.
21.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
So you guys supported her in that run for the election.
Yeah, we supported her. At first, she was appointed to the city council, and then she had to run an
22,
election
yeah.
the year afterwards.
Okay.
Yeah, and yeah, she won that election, and kind of as she was, you know, I was I was getting ready to phase out of the union board, but we still maintained, you know, like you're working on so much stuff.
Yeah.
You know, we became close friends, and in exploring the Bitcoin stuff, coming down here, we ended up, some of the council members came down here during adopting Bitcoin. And we kind of like, it was a good opportunity for them to learn what was happening here. So that's where kind of like, there's a lot of
Yeah.
twisting roads, but there was my first trip to El Salvador. And then I think it was my third trip was at the same time they came for adopting Bitcoin.
Okay. And you were mentioning before we went on the air that on your first trip, it was going back that kind of set the wheels spinning of bringing Bitcoin into the unions. And what were kind of the thought lines of that?
Yeah, so first trip to El Salvador, you know, me and a couple of buddies that also are firefighters, you know, we're in Bitcoin at this point, obviously, like, you know, heavily in. And, you know, I go to them and I go, we have to go see what's going on for ourselves. Like I've seen, you know, a lot of what's happening. We have to go see. Plus, I found this house in, you know, right on the beach. We're gonna surf. Like this is gonna be unreal. So we come down and I commit. I go, I will not buy anything with other than Bitcoin. So if I
Nice.
starve, I'll climb a tree and eat coconuts, but I will not, under any condition, spend $1 outside of Bitcoin. And they're like, okay, well, we'll keep some dollars just in case, you know, as the backup. So we had this trip, unbelievable trip. I always say you can never learn about a place until you deeply meet its people. And I was blown away just by the hospitality and people in El Salvador are so amazing. So that was like gem number one. The surf.
Where did you guys stay?
We stayed in San Blas.
Okay.
Yeah, we stayed in San Blas. There was this little surf break right in front of the house. Of course, I had charted out. We were going to go to up to El Tunco, El Zonte, and of course Punta Roca. And we didn't leave that surf break
Yeah.
once because
There's something nice about not having to get in the car to go anywhere.
unreal. The trip was super impactful. I ended up holding true to my not spending anything other than Bitcoin.
That's impressive because in that time there wasn't that much adoption yet in San Blas. Now there is. That's actually become the hub for Bitcoiners coming in. You know, obviously El Zonte is their first. You know, if they can find a place, this is where they come. But there's been so many people coming in that it's hard to find housing. So that San Blas has become kind of the overflow for Bitcoiners. So now there's a bunch of stores there that take it.
It was one of the best learning experiences because again, I always tell Bitcoiners I'm more interested these days in talking to non-Bitcoiners than Bitcoiners, not because it's just you're learning something every time. So we were going to places, and if they didn't take Bitcoin, we were like, all right, we're gone. Like, and some of them would go, wait, hold on. Okay, bring the thing. We take it. And you go, okay, all right, we take it. Or, you know, we just leave. And I learned so much about real world adoption, you know, by this country being able to do this thing where I could just have this learning zone in real time. And so I learned a ton about it. And on the way back, I was just like, why is, you know, I've been involved in unions for 10 years. Why has no union ever put this on the balance sheet? And of course you're like, it's not too different on why adoption here would be a struggle. You have a 10-year negative media campaign against Bitcoin with negative articles every time you pull your phone up. You know, someone lost their passcode. This is a scam. FTX collapses. I mean, they did a hell of a job in convincing people Bitcoin was super dangerous or a scam. And so I actually it hit me on the plane ride home. Like, what if we just did an initiative where, like our experiences in here, just getting people off of zero, we just did like $1 per member. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? Like, right? And so I developed, knowing my background in the unions, I go, let me craft an initiative that I know would be successful. I brought it to my union and said, you guys don't have to do this, but I'm going to try to see if there's other unions that are interested. They were really supportive and said, let's do it. We did it. And that kind of kicked off my work in nonprofits and like educating unions on initiatives. So El Salvador was extremely pivotal. Not to say who knows what route I would have taken, but like everything dominoes line up, and it was a huge part of my experience in Bitcoin in real time.
Yeah. So from El Salvador to you and your work with the unions, and then how did he broach the Bitcoin subject with you? Were you already kind of looking at Bitcoin, or how did that come about?
I knew of Bitcoin. My brother actually was involved, and I had a few friends in the music industry that much younger than me that were talking a lot about it, but more broadly in terms of cryptocurrency and like all these different coins.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was like the extent of my knowledge. But I don't even remember our first conversation, to be honest with you, about it.
I think it was in the fact that adopting Bitcoin was going to happen. I was slated to speak, and I know there was the ambassador had come up to
there we
visit.
go. That's how it started.
Lana, and we're at the Soho House, and I think she was there for some event, and I was saying, hey, you guys as a council should go down, coordinate with them, because if you went at the same time as this conference, you can learn a ton about Bitcoin, and it would just be a good experience to see what's happening in El Salvador. There's tons of stuff happening.
Yeah, I don't think so I hosted her. She was meeting with one of our senators who I know very well, and they needed a space, like a private social club. So they contacted me. That's how I ended up going, because it was going to be at Soho House. And actually, we were going because one of our council members is also a dear friend. Her mom is from El Salvador.
Okay.
And she'd been here growing up as a kid. And so she has family here. Her like great-great-grandfather was the president at one point. And so we have had sister city programs before through Santa Monica with other beach cities. And there's a little area where the Ferris wheel and all that appear, and it's called Sunset Park. We have a Sunset Park in Santa Monica. I live in it. So we thought, here's an opportunity to come and explore this sister city opportunity, but also there was this element of public safety. Obviously here, much more drastic, but it was just interesting to look at, here's this community that's totally thriving now that once was the murder capital of the world. And people were starting to nitpick, and the media likes to focus on negative news. So
Yes.
there was a lot. Every time something happened in Santa Monica, it would make headlines. I think at one point we were named the most dangerous, which is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, if you've just been in downtown LA for 5 minutes, it was like, so it was sort of all of those things, right? Like, look at this extreme polar opposite situation of how this whole country right-sided itself. And there was a small piece of like, and then we'll see Dom speak at the Bitcoin conference. And actually, he's very good at explaining things to the layman about it and making it interesting. And so he gave me this book, of which I took way too long to read. And he would say he was going to quiz me on every chapter. And I had a lot of questions. I have my 6 and my 63, so I worked in the traditional financial investment world before, so it wasn't too far.
I also have my licenses, the same.
So
yeah,
you
yeah,
understand.
Yeah,
So I said to him, during the day working for a company, both with large organizations and multi-million-dollar investors, also using life insurances, VULs, GIULs as investment vehicles. At night, my partner and I would sit around the dining table of just traditional families who felt they could never understand the stock market. They could never save for the future. And so I likened it to that. I wasn't as scared or as like, some people might be super trepidatious, like, oh my gosh, because blue chip stocks, like, I don't know. So I was interested. It just took a lot for me to understand the technology. And I just saw it as an opportunity. Like I was mentioning to you before we started the show, like I don't consider myself a politician. I had no political aspirations, just a person who was born and raised in my beach community, who was running a family legacy brick and mortar music store business. The only legislative actions I had taken was I'm an elected board member for the National Association of Music Merchants. So supporting Proposition 28, making sure Title I and Title IX were funded through our public school system so that every school had music and arts. So going to Sacramento and DC for those things, I understood how to convince politicians and how to put forward legislative action. But being on city council, it's like now you're tasked with everything from speed bumps to public safety to, homelessness. So I think in looking at it, I saw it as an opportunity of one of the main goals I've had, and I still have, especially as mayor, is civic engagement. How do you get people who aren't normally involved? Because the reality is, we look at the election and less than half of the people voted for city council. I think more than half don't even know who the city council members are.
And probably a lot of people that voted
still don't know.
Okay, I'm going to check this box. I think I heard this name somewhere.
It's exactly how I expect. Did you hear the name? Do you pay attention to the flyers? Oftentimes I'll say, as somebody who in the past has done this, my husband and I talk about this, like, if you don't know who they are, you're like, oh, another Latino, I'll just vote for them. And they might not share any of the same, views that you have. And that's dangerous, right? We've seen it. And I think in our community, we saw that happen a lot. And so I was like, this is great, because it reminded me from back to when I was sitting around the dining table of families who knew nothing about the stock market or really how to save or how money worked. And so this was an opportunity to just educate people on financial literacy. Like, talking about Bitcoin forces you to talk about the US dollar, about money.
Saving,
So there was that aspect of it. And then there was this other aspect of, like, from the far end of the spectrum on the continuum, look at this country. My mom is from a third world country. She didn't get her first pair of shoes till she was a teenager. She bathed in a pipe in the road. And it was like, look at a country who, I don't know what the average citizen's education level is here, but
fairly low.
Right.
Yeah.
But I would imagine that it's much less than where we are, right?
Yeah.
And here's this entire country that, most of the people are selling, coconuts by the side of the road, but they can accept Bitcoin. How did they do that? And not to mention, regardless of what Bukele did from a safety standpoint, and I'm a big fan of his. He's young, he's bold, he's brave, he's
transformed the country.
He's transformed this whole country. But I don't think anyone can deny that some of these schools have been rebuilt, roads have been paved, the tourism has been so robust. No one can deny the fact that Bitcoin had a part in that. And so to me, I thought, even if we took some grain of sand back to our little beach and we could implement something like bringing back tourism, changing the negative narrative to positive, a positive narrative about people who are so excited to come because we're doing something innovative. And by the way, look at this amazing beach and the amazing pier that they have and the great restaurants and the art that we have. Much like when I came to El Salvador, I've experienced all those things. So, and like Don mentioned earlier, this is a group of people that when we just brought forward the initiative, just the likes and the comments and the positive news that we got, that has a ripple effect. That in and of itself was an investment piece if you wanted to turn it into some.
Well, yeah, you look at like, how much it would cost you to get that same, they talk
Exactly.
about getting earned media from doing things like this. So you look at what it would cost to like pay for that type of publicity, and you would obviously never be able to afford
No.
that.
And I come
the same
from a
thing in El
marketing-
Salvador. They've seen, they've gotten billions of dollars of earned media that's really transformed the image of the country and has brought tourists in. So
fearlessness behind it. So
Yeah.
I come from a marketing background, and Dom and I both understood like the timing of information, and also just to be clear, like for us, we have to use that marketing tool as like a shiny thing for the rest of the folks within the city staff to sort of legitimize what we're doing.
Yeah.
But the reality is behind it, we both have a passion to move it forward even further, but you can't shove things down people's throats, right?
No.
I mean,
You give them practical things. Look, this is going to help us in this way. And so
Right.
even if they're not believers in Bitcoin from the get-go, they
Right.
at least understand the benefits it brings.
You break those narratives. You break the misinformed narratives. All Bitcoiners are criminals. Well, wait a minute. I just saw a teacher at a school saying this is really cool. What a great initiative. But if it's only for criminals, why are they excited about it? And so you have to break those down one at a time.
well, we had a situation where there was a cryptocurrency, there was some bad actors that took advantage of our most vulnerable sector of our community. And Don made a great point that, well, if we had the Bitcoin office prior to that, we could have educated people to be aware of these things. And so, again, we're leading with education. There's this benefit of like this, free marketing opportunity, positive press. And I think, as things continue and more people who are considered respectable or whatever are notable are also showing up for Bitcoin, it's softening people's guard and they're letting it down a little bit. But I mean, for me, I just thought, what a great opportunity to get people, because usually, and I don't care where you are, any country, there's like the civically engaged people that are this small group of people that end up running things. Everybody else has their head down. They're putting food on the table, getting their kids to school. They're working, they're building and living their lives. And then they look up when things hit their front door. And so this is a way to engage people that are outside of the normal civically engaged folks. And it's also like, then you look at, well, what type of people are those people? These are people who are talented, innovative, they're dreamers, they're smart. And we as a city consider ourselves extremely progressive, not just in our policies, but in our, worldwide thinking and the way we embrace a diverse population of both the business sector. We like to consider ourselves big in big tech. So to me, this sort of puts us on the map. If people are thinking of moving here, or, moving to somewhere to build their company, we want to be on the map.
Gives you guys an edge.
Yeah, and hopefully we can offer something within our, the mid to long term goal is like we've talked about, like what if we, paid people in a certain way, or even like myself at some point, he told me you should consider taking your mayor's pay, which is very small, in Bitcoin. Just to set the example of the long-term asset investment perspective. I think what's confusing and hard for people is like there's this culture. And so that's why I think El Salvador is so interesting, because on a continuum, like I said, the woman selling coconut water or whatever by the side of the road is accepting Bitcoin. Now, of course, you could say, well, in a country that was so, destitute or, didn't have really any other options, here's the Chiva wallet and a bright and shiny opportunity. But when coming here, I don't know that it's really that. Not a lot of the people we talked to, like the driver we had, a year ago, he didn't fully understand it and he would cash out the Bitcoin right away. And on the way here, we were asking him, do you still have the Bitcoin that Dom's been giving you since he's been coming to El Salvador? He says, I really understand it now. And now he's telling his brothers, no, you don't want to cash it out. You want to hold on to it. He said at first he was taking the interest when it would go up and just trading that in for dollars. But now he for the first time really understands saving. Now they don't have like the stock market and mutual funds
Yeah.
like we do. And so if he can understand that in El Salvador, why can't we shift our thinking and also talk about saving and investing and how government agencies can be more lucrative and attractive by offering these alternative ways of saving for the future? Because pensions are kind of going away, at least in, I know in government jobs, those are like the only place you can have that.
Yeah.
But even within those, the structure is changing. It's not like before. So I think cities don't have a choice and they have to look at this. I know for us, we have a lot of litigation that has drained our coffers big time. And we're not keeping up with inflation. And at one of the panels yesterday, somebody made a great comment about, you shouldn't be looking at it in terms of like inflation. You should be looking at it even higher than that, because that's not even keeping up with your.
Yeah. Well, you should be looking at it in terms of housing costs
Exactly.
in Santa Monica, and
Yes.
that's, if it's not keeping up with that increase, then people are falling behind with it. I love how it's all come full circle, because one of the big initiatives in El Salvador has been the Surf City initiative, which obviously came from California. Bukele going up there and visiting and seeing how California has utilized surf tourism, and then with Bitcoin adoption, seeing that go back, and you guys come down here and get the idea to bring that back to drive tourism and business opportunities in Santa Monica. And who would have thought 5 years ago that people would be looking at El Salvador for ideas on how to boost things. So I love to see that.
Well, that's the real sister city. Like traditionally, we've done these sister city programs where it consists of dignitaries and people coming. We take them to eat, we show them around, we trade little pins and gifts, and then that's kind of it. I think we have a sister city in Mazatlan. We've given resources, whether it be fire trucks and things like that. But here's a different avenue at looking at a sister city, because like you just said, we can show them our ways of using our natural resources to, put us on the map for tourism and whatnot, and how we collect on taxes to continue to beautify and modernize the city. But we can look to El Salvador definitely to see how they've used this digital asset to not only attract tourists, but also to build entire communities and right size some things politically that were maybe not so good before. So Bukele is a very smart young man who's, just so bold. And if we can take anything from him, it's just staying the course. I think that's the hardest thing as an elected leader. You get, a lot of naysayers and people will make things up. And if this was my ultimate goal, was to be a politician, I think that's what's hard. Then maybe people get scared and I would be shifting course, because I would say, well, if I take this route, it's not going to lead me to door number one. I don't care if I'm just a council member in Santa Monica. That's the community I live in. And even if that didn't work out because of Bitcoin, if I now have opened the door to push that initiative without being an elected official with the experience I have. So,
well, that's what's been so impressive about Bukele, is that he had this long-term vision. And so when he went down this route, even when the price was going down, because when he adopted it, it was like as we were going into a bear market. And so he was getting hammered by the press and, they've lost all this money. And he just kept doubling down, saying, no, hey, we have a long-term perspective on how this can change, not just the value of it, but just the freedom that it brings to people, the way that it brings financial inclusion to those who've been excluded from the traditional banking system. And he just kept doubling down, where most politicians would have reversed course. But he, even though he knew it wasn't popular initially and knew that he was getting a lot of negative feedback, and obviously now we know that he looks like a hero because of it. But it's it takes a special type of person to be able to do that, because most people would have turned tail on that. So
you have to have thick skin, and you have to. I was just going to say that the transparency factor is also something that's interesting to me, because in every local government and federal government, the biggest concern of the majority of people is this transparency issue, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's interesting when people are so negative about it, when it's one of the most transparent, function. If we were to include it and adopt it on our balance sheet, it's so transparent. It's really about educating people, and that's the first step we've taken.
Yeah, I think one of the big takeaways was interesting, because Bukele put on a masterclass in the concept of big problems require bold and big solutions. There's no way around it. And as I was watching what was happening here and talking to people like yourself that have come here before that saw the transition, it was pronounced, but the actions taken were incredibly bold and pronounced. And while Santa Monica was dealing with more petty crime and they have a homelessness issue, and it's a different issue than the, terrorist style, we can't even call them gangs because they were at a different level. The takeaway was to change, if the perception of Santa Monica becomes, whether misguided, partially true, that it is, overrun by homelessness, your solution to homelessness has to be bold and huge. You'll never change the perception with a couple of shelters here and a couple of things there. And even though the solutions here don't fit there, seeing them and understanding that takeaway from what they've done with Bitcoin and in making it an incredibly safe place shows that you have to take a bold solution. And so again, I think that's why Bukele has inspired so many people around the world, is like, hey, we're not saying we have the solution for you, but certainly if you're going to change people's perception, the solution has to be so bold, almost to where they say you're going overkill.
Yeah.
Right. That's where you want to be. If you're a leader, you want to be working on homelessness so much that they say there's too many resources on the street. This is too much. Oh, okay, cool. So now you feel that we're just like doing, okay, now we'll scale back, or because we've really put a dent in it.
No, you definitely got to hit it hard. I'm curious, shifting gears a little bit. I know we went through some pictures beforehand. So you guys have done some events around Bitcoin. I saw you had the big Ferris wheel. I don't know if we can pull those pictures up, Paco, but
that was a big deal.
I want to get a little bit of backstory on this. So tell me about how did this come about, and then was this part of, you guys did a festival, a peer-to-peer festival?
That wasn't part of it. That was like an embargo that we had. Dom was like, this has got to be big before we presented at the city council. And so I called, I said, well, what if we use the Ferris wheel? Because you can put up, digital stuff up there. So
yeah, I think we were having a work lunch or something.
Yeah.
And the office was almost underway. It was going to happen, but it was like, hey, if this gets approved, we need something. And so we're like, oh, the Ferris wheel, that'd be impossible. They'd never do that, But it was like, okay, they do different stuff and they put things up on the Ferris wheel. And so reaching out, found a way to make it work. And I'm like, even when we found a way to make it work, I'm like, nah, it's not, it's not going to happen. And so we timed it to where their council meetings go late into the night. And so they can go sometimes to like,
really?
3 in the morning.
Sometimes 4 in the morning.
Wow.
So we had a speaker group there with some folks from the board of my nonprofit, tons of incredible speakers. And if anyone's listening, I always encourage to go back and watch that meeting, which I think was July 12th or 20th. I'll find a way to post it up. But the speakers that spoke at the council meeting, they killed it so hard that what I had planned to say, I scrapped the whole thing. I had planned this like Al Pacino Scent of a Woman, like, this is why we need the, Bitcoin office, like, the whole damn lot of you, I had this whole thing planned, and the speakers killed it so hard. I'm watching each one go and I'm like, oh my God, this is like a Motown's greatest hits of just Bitcoin speakers. That all I really had to come up and say when it was my turn was, hey, like, you have a choice on the people that are going to build your city and the future of it. I mean, can you think of better people that you would want around, positive, capable, talented, optimistic people building your city? And so I was just like very brief. And then the next day, Lana, we're able to, on the Ferris wheel, they put up the B up there. And so I was like, all right, epic. This is unreal. And it was awesome of the peer to do that, the company out there, and that was Pacific Park, right? That runs.
Yeah. And so I mean, what we've done is not come up against anything you do in a government situation. We want to move fast, and then it's like roadblocks.
Yeah,
So people
yeah.
will ask you 2 years from an initiative, like, so what's happening with it? And it's like still in the building phase. So for us to even put together the peer-to-peer was, I mean, a feat.
So was this a festival then, the peer-to-peer?
Yeah,
Okay.
so Pacific Bitcoin big festival out
Yeah.
there ended up getting canceled.
Yeah.
And so, like many other Bitcoiners, it's like, oh, there's a bunch of Bitcoiners already with tickets that are come in here. How can we
Yeah,
salvage
because
this?
they canceled kind of late into the, yeah.
And it was
Yeah.
Tech Week.
And so we're like, what can the Bitcoin office do? And I go, well, hey, there's this area of Santa Monica on the promenade that's been kind of a challenge. Big box commercial buildings. We know that retail has shifted. This is an area that used to be on a Friday at 10 a.m. was wall to wall packed with tourists. And, due to a lot of shifting conditions after COVID and retail, which started before COVID, it's a half partially vacant area that is looking for a jump start. And so it's like, okay, well, what if we bring folks to this block? What a great thing. We can engage the shops and stores that are here. We can bring a bunch of traffic on the promenade. So we came up with this concept of the peer-to-peer street festival. And we engaged a bunch of the different businesses on that block. We had trying to do this. This is one of my
I do this for a
happiest
living.
moments, but my biggest mistakes ever was to say I'm going to do a conference. I mean, I still regret it to this day. Big shout out to anyone that does any kind of conference or event work. Like, I give them my highest regards. But we took a whole block of the promenade. We had, there was an old what was it, like
I think it
Anchor
was an
Blue
Old
or like
Navy.
Old Navy, but a store that's now a pickleball court indoor. So Fold came in and sponsored a pickleball tournament with a 5K,
nice.
the first ever Bitcoin prize. So it was 5,000 worth of Bitcoin, now probably worth like 8 or 9,000 maybe. We had one of the restaurants, 1212, had we knew someone in the community that had a non-alcoholic beer company, so he had set up a little beer garden and took Bitcoin payments. Zaprite assisted with that. We had a media shop was set up at the Old Navy building, and they helped with the live stream. We built a news desk from scratch. I called Mike Germano from Bitcoin Mag, and I go, hey, how much to get the mining news desk out here? And he's like, not going to happen, bro. Like, to ship that thing it's like a nightmare. The thing's made of solid steel, cast iron steel. And I go, damn it. And I go, you know what? All right. I call a couple of my buddies, the firefighters, and I go, hey, we got to just build our own desk. Is it doable? And, they're just great. They're like, yeah, dude, we can do it. And I'm like, this is not going to work out. And so meanwhile, as we're planning for this street festival, we're building, when we're off, when they're getting off work, we're building this news desk and trying to make it work and it came out.
You got to show the news desk.
Yeah,
It's pretty.
I'm sure we can get a picture, but it came out.
Is that the news desk?
Yeah,
there?
we're
That's
standing
the
in
news
front of
desk.
it.
So
You see the fans?
It had box fans. Terrence Michael was helping out, and I go, he's like, what if I just go get box fans for it? And we had it unplugged, and the box fans spun from the wind. So when we had a state senator on one of the panels, and I said, hey, Senator, just so you know, this is 100% renewable energy mining right here, because this fan is spinning from the wind. So we made this huge desk replica. We had the art gallery in the background. There was a whole expo there on Bitcoin art, and that was Bitcoin is art. We had the vendors all on the tents there.
Did you bring in food vendors and stuff? And
we didn't have huge food vendors because it was such it just added a different dynamic.
Yeah.
But there were food. We had a boba shop, and they were selling the Bitcoin bobas.
And
did you get people to accept Bitcoin in the shops?
We got, this is, again, this is the beer garden was the only spot that accepted Bitcoin. In working through the Bitcoin office and the Chamber of Commerce, who's been really supportive, that's obviously the toughest challenge because they're busy. A lot of them have their own issues, and we know that due to a
that's
walled
my friend
off,
who,
that's the beer garden.
He did it though because it was easy for him as an independent vendor, and he was really open to it. So I told him, I was like, he's a good friend. He'll do it, and he did.
Yeah. The walled off garden that is the point of sale system we know is a huge barrier for businesses accepting Bitcoin. The solutions that are in place right now, a lot are, I know Cash App has some stuff with Square, but it's only for sole proprietors. And this is an area where we talk about regulation and MasterCard. And there was someone gave a great talk on Visa and MasterCard at Plan B. I forget his name, but it was incredible. They have a walled off garden,
Yeah.
and they make it really tough to integrate. And so that is a frontier that will be interesting to watch play out. But like I always tell Lana, I go, buying a coffee at a corporate business, that's like final stage Bitcoin activity. Long before that, I think we will see, and already starting to see, the peer-to-peer component of people being like, hey, dude, I'll sell you my motorcycle for 10K, or
Yeah.
you can give me 5K in Bitcoin. That kind of has to happen before so I know a lot of Bitcoin, there's all kinds of facets that are firing simultaneously. You got the Lightning folks doing the Lightning work, the on-chain, the miners, the digital asset, pristine, BlackRock's doing their thing. Everyone's doing their thing, but yeah, that was tough to get people to accept Bitcoin.
Well, I think that was like why El Salvador's adoption has been so crucial, because you had the Starbucks and the McDonald's and all these kind of big corporations, I think for the first time accept Bitcoin and realize like, wow, we save a lot of money because we're not paying credit card fees, and this actually can work good. So I think that stuff will filter over time. But I definitely know, because my prior life, I had a food service business actually in California. So we did stuff like the LA County Fair and the Orange County Fair. And we were trying forever to integrate Bitcoin into it, but because of the systems, the way they wanted to report there and all these things, it was a lot of hurdles. So I definitely like one step at a time. But once people realize how much better it is to not be captive to Visa and MasterCard and these things, I think it's going to be unstoppable.
Yeah, I always say whatever Bitcoiner builds the premium point of sale system just on its own,
Yeah.
like Bitcoin aside, that's going to be revolutionary, because we know, talking to I've learned so much trying to get people to accept Bitcoin, is that the point of sale system does so much more than process payments.
Yeah.
Staffing, accounting, messaging, like it does a lot. So it's really difficult for these companies to go, oh, I'm going to set up a whole other parallel system, or I'll shine my POS system. But the day that a Bitcoiner creates the premier point of sale system that also accepts Bitcoin, it's on, because they're always going to go for that.
Yeah.
And Bitcoin will be kind of in the background there. So I know there's look, that's why we all got in Bitcoin. We have the best people working on things 24/7, and they're driven. So it's only a matter of time.
But it is a culture shift, because also when we were talking to Max and Stacy the other day, she was saying like, and if you are paying with Bitcoin, you should really be offered a discount, right? Because obviously
Better money.
It's better money. And I think that goes back to the whole saving, like just the same way people live check to check as a brick and mortar retail owner. Businesses are living check to check. However, there's different retail setups. Like my niche market is very different in the instrument industry, because we pay over time to our vendors. So I think if there's any Bitcoiners out there, I'm working right now with a POS developer for our industry, because it's so niche and different the way we rent and rent to own. It's not your traditional, like you're turning items quarterly or even annually. It's very different the way we sell our instruments, because they're very expensive to schools, $10,000 to $20,000 brass instruments, starting instruments over $1,000. It would be interesting if somebody could figure out how to work within the music industry, products industry, because there is more holding on to that money and reserving it. And so I could see, those types of businesses being interested in it. So
Interesting. So I'm curious as to where the idea for the Bitcoin office came into. I'm assuming it was replicated after what's happened here in El Salvador. It sounds like you guys are working with Stacy. I know we have some other pictures of you with the ambassador and some other folks from El Salvador. There's
Yeah.
Stacy.
That was almost a year ago. Yeah. Or a year and a half ago.
So what are you guys focused on in the Bitcoin office, and how much do you guys coordinate with what's happening here in El Salvador?
Well, I mean, we just kicked it off, and right away, the first event was that one that Dom was just mentioning on the 1200 block, where there was also like UCLA students there. There was those education booths, just trying to like getting everybody from businesses to the community to be aware of it.
Yeah.
And then
the 4 initiatives of the design.
right, but
that-
we also had we did also have the other event in the chamber office. But yeah, I mean, we have 4
We
initiatives.
hosted the Bit Devs.
The Bit Devs, yeah, we hosted an event at the chamber office, and so you want to go ahead and speak on that before?
The design of it was okay. So here's a Bitcoin office that can really blaze the trail in El Salvador. They have the support of the president, the national government. They're pushing it in ways that we could never dream to do so in the city because we're just one municipality amongst a state, amongst a nation. But how, similar to that flight back, everything kind of centers around how do you design an initiative that's what would a get off zero initiative look like for a city? Well, number one, there'd be no budget, because the minute you talk about allocating funds, then people's kind of that misinformation.
You're gambling with taxpayer money.
Yeah, you're gambling with taxpayer money. We could be spending this on real schooling, and you're playing, Bitcoin make-believe internet money, and you guys are out of control. So we had to insulate the city council or anyone from that. So it is truly a $0 initiative, $0 from the city. Okay, what are we going to do? What does this office do? We can't have a physical location because, once again, you guys, this should be used as a information center for government documents, and you guys are doing this dumb Bitcoin thing. Okay, no. Our people ask, "Where's your office?" And I always say it's in our 2 shoes. That's wherever our feet go. So the initiative was simple: provide 4 initiatives. Number 1, provide education for the community, residents, visitors, workforce folks, etc. And that's priority 1. Priority number 2 was find ways to bring Bitcoin business and the industry to Santa Monica. Where are those opportunities to bring Bitcoin companies and the industry around it into Santa Monica to fit the city's initiatives? One example of that was the peer-to-peer festival. City's initiative is to revive the promenade. Well, the Bitcoin office helped play a role in that, in bringing what is normally a very slow, vacant day and having, every shop going off and having it be a big day with outside companies like Fold bringing, prize money into Santa Monica. Great. Okay. So that was 2. Number 3 was career opportunities and finding a way to engage younger people and all people in Santa Monica to go, hey, you can get a great job in Santa Monica without leaving. You can work remote for all kinds of companies in this space. So that's one of our initiatives. The last, which was the most bold, was evaluating the potential for the city to mine Bitcoin using city-generated renewable energy that would otherwise go wasted. And this is one where we're still trying to tackle this because the city imports its energy from a provider that's 100% renewable. So therefore, it's generated renewables like the solar panels on a city building that on the weekend, maybe the employees aren't there because they're off. It's hard to tap that because it all feeds into one system. Yeah. So the one thing we promised and made very clear, because Santa Monica prioritizes, climate initiatives and sustainable renewable energy, was we're not going to mine anything unless we can say for sure that this was unused energy that could be. So we're still working on that, but it'd be great to simply do it as an exploration, as an exercise, to learn if it would be something they could do in the future. So those are the 4 initiatives, how it's designed. Then you have to move it through the council, get good support, good letters of support, good speakers, which we had a ton, great support, people from the community excited.
And I'll just say from that, the Pickle Pop spot is having another, nothing to do with us, Bitcoin event there. So they have a whole new, onslaught of customers now that are, playing pickleball. And so
I love combining those two things together because I know it's just pickleball is just like growing like crazy. So you kind of align that. We just actually built a pickleball court down in Punta Mongo on the other
Oh, wow.
end of the country as part of our community center there. So
I was saying if these two communities find each other,
Oh my
yeah.
God.
Bitcoiners and pickleballers, like
Yeah.
they may take over the whole like world.
I
You know
joke
what I
that
mean?
that's how I won because when I was running, I set up outside of pickleball courts because during that time they were fighting about court space.
Uh-huh.
So it's funny, like if we could find a way to soften and the tennis folks and the pickleball people could come together and share space, I think we can find a way to share space in
Yeah.
in the Bitcoin space.
That's funny. Where do you guys have any plan of trying to, we've talked about some of the challenges of Bitcoin adoption, but obviously here we're big believers that the circular economy aspect of getting people to move to a Bitcoin standard is kind of crucial as a long-term goal. Do you guys have any plans for retail adoption or trying to help stores understand the benefits that come from that?
Because I do have a brick and mortar retail, and I was talked to him a lot about how he just mentioned the POS systems are so much more than just
Yeah.
ringing somebody up. So I hope to have through our chamber, who's been extremely supportive, and they actually have a physical space and has said you can use this space anytime you want in terms of a physical office. So the goal would be to have specifically some training days for just retailers. But again, you got to back it up because if the owner of that retailer isn't invested or
Yeah.
curious at all, so that there's a runway for that for sure. But in the meantime, we hope somebody is able to offer something because the thing we ran up against was the sole proprietor. Like I have a C corp, so it was only really available to those sole proprietors that could accept it on Cash App. I mean, there's just too much transition. It makes it, if it's too cumbersome, it's already so difficult to do business. People
Yeah.
aren't going to do it. So,
An ideal target that we just started talking about is Santa Monica has a very vibrant farmers market community. So this is an area that we're looking into that,
Oh, yeah.
you have the folks that are growing their own food and it's the ethos is so strong between Bitcoin and them. And so that's something that we hope to do making it to where, potentially a couple weeks before we give them information, we have someone on site that maybe some folks that can assist with transactions and then have a great little day. There's tons of local LA Bitcoiners that will come. So
Yeah.
that's definitely on our target
No, you'll
list.
drive definitely new customers of doing something like that. They have a Bitcoin farmers market here in El Zonte. Then they also do it in Berlin, the other community. And I'm amazed at how many people come, specifically for that. So
That's got to be wild because you've seen, look, I was going to ask you this earlier. Aside from sometimes probably just waking up and taking a step back and looking at the country as a whole, because I always say people are often hampered down by this concept that they can't make change. Little things, going on a surf trip, working with community folks, starting a little Bitcoin community. But obviously, you're a wonderful example of like these massive ripples. But do you ever look at the farmers market and see what it's become and have a flashback to 05 or 04 and go like, whoa, this is just it's insane, it's unrecognizable.
no, all the time in so many different areas. Just at the conference there the other day, we were listening to the Minister of Tourism, Morena, was talking about how Bitcoin has turbocharged tourism in El Salvador. That El Salvador was like the second highest growth tourism market in the world, and the other one I think was Qatar, and they had the World Cup that aided them in that. So just it was wild, like sitting back and thinking like, wow, this all started from this little project in this little community that nobody had really heard of before, and it like ripples out. And so I love now seeing what you guys are doing in Santa Monica, and the advantage that that's going to bring to the people there. And I'm sure you guys have had some naysayers and people that are like, what are you wasting your time on? And probably even a lot of people that benefit this from it won't even realize that they're benefiting from it because it's, it's from somebody that read an article about what was happening. So they thought, well, let's go check out Santa Monica, and while they're there, they're going to eat in that person's restaurant, and they don't even know that that's because of your guys' efforts. So I'm sure that can be kind of frustrating at times, but I would just encourage you guys, because these things take on a life of their own, and they just keep building on the momentum that's coming.
And you mentioned something, because we have LA 28 coming. So, I mean, if we could really get in a space where we're up and running, and I mean, how it would put us on the map even more for someone who maybe was
When you
on the
say LA
fence.
28, are you talking
The
about the Olympics? Okay, yeah.
So hopefully we'll be able to host beach volleyball in Santa Monica. We don't know yet.
God, we have to get a Bitcoin beach court somewhere.
Oh, yes.
Right?
But
That would be
yeah.
awesome.
It has to happen somewhere.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, that would be great. And just if we were in a space where vendors and people could accept Bitcoin, I mean, that would just...
Well, especially because you have so many international people coming
Yeah.
from around the world that they're trying to exchange money. But if they're like, and I'm for sure there will be thousands of Bitcoiners that are part of the, hundreds of thousands of people that come in for that. So if you could get those people in there spending Bitcoin, that would be amazing.
You were mentioning the farmers market. I'm just going to put it out there that if there's anybody who wants to help collaborate or donate even to, there's a lot of people really wanting to help our farmers out there in California because of the fires. And we have this initiative to sort of push people coming out to the farmers markets and shopping, because unfortunately, they were going home with a lot of their produce. But it would be interesting to be able to have the financial literacy conversation in booth, in the Bitcoin office booth at the farmers market, but be able to set the farmers up right? Like, on one farmer's market, and then the following week or two, actually give out free Bitcoin for people to spend at the farmer's market. There's a program called WIC in California, Women and Children, and it's for low-income mothers, and they have a seasonal time where you can get these checks to spend at the farmer's market, and it gets matched through the city and through state funding. It would be really interesting to look at matching it, because you would also be doing something for the farmers long term, in terms of building their asset. So
no, I love that. Matching it in Bitcoin.
Yeah,
that
someone
way
might be listening that might want to be involved in that. So I'm just going to put it out there.
Yeah, that would be. I think that's a no-brainer. Like it just makes sense, at the farmers market. One of the questions I was going to ask you, just not to, to flip the script a little bit, is I found it so fascinating. A lot of times people hear of El Salvador and they go, oh, it's top-down adoption going on there. And knowing your story, the bottom-up, super bottom-up adoption, how have you noticed the dynamic there? From where I sit, you had it's almost like the bottom-up leapfrogged to the top through Bukele learning about, El Zonte and what was going on, and probably a lot of other factors. How have you observed kind of that middle ground, and maybe learning lessons for us as we work on an office and adoption, on how do you make up the difference between top down, bottom up, and everything in between?
So and that's been a criticism. Some people that don't really understand what's happened here, oh, it's top down, and they don't realize, no, it was people at the top seeing the benefits in a lot of different ways. So one, obviously, is the benefit for the people, and seeing that this started in a community working with the poorest of the poor, people that were excluded from the financial system. And now all of a sudden they had electronic payments. They had a mechanism to save in. They were able to keep funds flowing in the community through a circular Bitcoin economy. So you had that aspect. But the people at the top also realized, wow, this is giving us great publicity. All of a sudden we have all this earned media. I mean, to have a 60-minute segment that's done at the beaches in El Zonte, showing people the beautiful beaches, to all the top publications have done all these stories. And so El Salvador could never hope to have that kind of exposure really through any other thing that they could do. I mean, there's nothing else I think they could do that would have brought that type of media in. So I think that the top is more seen hey, this is something we should embrace because it's good for our people on all levels. And I think we've seen that recently in the U.S. also. We're seeing politicians are embracing it, but it's not coming from them and being pushed down on the people. It's the people pushing them, people in the Bitcoin community, to say, hey, you need to take this seriously. This is something that can be good for the U.S. It can be good for you. And obviously for the politicians, they're thinking selfishly, well, this is good for me as a politician because these Bitcoiners are like crazy, and they're going to go out and vote for me if I embrace this. And a lot of times, I think initially when they embrace it, it's for ulterior motives, but like all of us, once you kind of get pushed down the rabbit hole, a lot of them then wind up becoming true Bitcoiners. And so it's a weird way of the people from the bottom pushing it into the people at the top. And then once the people at the top are on board, they can make life a lot easier for us because it's much easier to push something forward if the government's not trying to shut you down or throw you in jail or stop you. I mean, I've always told people, we don't necessarily need the government pushing things, but we definitely don't want them pushing against us. It's if we don't have to worry that someone's going to show up at our house, knocking on the door and arrest us, it makes doing the work a lot easier. So yeah, so I think it comes both top and bottom. I don't know if I answered your question.
No, for sure. I think it's fascinating, and as you were talking about vendors, and you're talking about that, it's like. This will never happen again, right? Like Mama Rosa will never front run Larry Fink ever again, and the fact that a local, restaurant owner on the highway going through El Zonte literally front ran Larry Fink, who clients pay billions of dollars to bring the best deals forward. She had it first. It'll never happen again. And yeah, just the whole bottom up, top down dynamic. I think you answered it perfectly because it's more complex than people give credit to. And they just want to simplify things and say, this is terrible. The government shouldn't do this, force it on the people. But then wait, there's a small community that actually brought it up. It's like, hey, let's just like put some of the noise away and like take this gift for what it is, and fill in the gaps by whatever means necessary.
No, I love that. I think that's a good note to close on, unless there's something we haven't covered that you guys.
No, this was great to be here again, and I'm excited to experience it again, and just to see, even with just the driver, like the growth of just this beach community in the last 15 months, his knowledge, his excitement around Bitcoin. It's like a real firsthand look at what could be and what will be in Santa Monica, hopefully soon.
Awesome. So how can people follow your efforts in Santa Monica, the Bitcoin office there? Any way that they can support, make sure that they're following you guys on Twitter or anything else. Let's
I
push
gotta get
that
better
out.
at that. My Twitter sucks, so please follow me. I have an Instagram. Lana Negrete Santa Monica is my council member one.
Yeah, your Twitter I think is Lana Negrete 22.
Yeah, 22. Lana Negrete 22 is my Twitter, and then we have Proof of Workforce.
Yeah, SM Bitcoin Office is at SM Bitcoin Office on X.
Okay.
Proof of Workforce, which is a nonprofit that I started to assist, workers, wage earners, unions, pension funds, now cities and even states with whatever kind of initiatives. That's Workforce BTC on Twitter.
And so if people, just real quick, so if people are part of a union or part of, or, work in a city somewhere and they want this, they can reach out to you.
Yes.
And you will come to them and say, hey, these are the different ways we can help you guys, get off zero and start using Bitcoin as part of your organization.
Yes, if you're a worker, a wage earner, and a Bitcoiner or not a Bitcoiner, and you think you want to bring Bitcoin to your organization, I built this nonprofit to provide zero cost support for folks trying to do that. So we, help them out with whatever they need, and we have all these initiatives that have proven successful and been passed by rank and file members of the unions. And again, my goal with that was I didn't want to wake up in 2035, see Bitcoin succeed in a way that I think we all can agree that it's going to succeed, and then continue to see wage earners and workers struggling to keep up with inflation, having a lower quality of life, and just, getting hammered by the system. That, to me, doesn't mean that Bitcoin will have failed or not. It won't mean that I will have failed. It just means that maybe in a very important aspect, Bitcoin failed or we failed to bring those people with us. And I know it's a hard task because everyone's doing their part. I mean, every Bitcoiner I know can never be accused of not trying to spread, awareness of this, but this is just my way of doing it. So yeah, anyone out there, I will, whether it's like speaking at your union meeting, calling on the phone, talking to the board, we just want to show them what we're doing and where we think Bitcoin can serve the everyday worker and wage earner. So yeah,
Come to our next event.
our next
One in
event,
April.
we're trying to do a thing with the public library in April, where we're going to kind of have a little, not a conference, but an educational day for community members. We'll do a career day simultaneously where people can like build a resume and companies can come try to like recruit folks that are looking for jobs there. We'll if I really hate myself, we'll do another peer-to-peer street festival. But
Again,
I will,
that's where you put it out. Who wants to help us build
need
the
help
conference?
with that. I can't expect to live very long in life if we do that the same way. So we would need help for the peer-to-peer, but I do think it's a great day. So I do want to do it again. And I will say this, the vendors that came and the help I had from like my board to the people that participated, they did so much. And still, they did such a heavy lift in making it happen. LA BitDevs was huge in putting stuff together, all the vendors. So we'll do it again. And I'm sure everyone knows the drill now, but we can always use help there. So yeah, reach out and we'll find a way to try to incorporate people as we kind of catch our breath and are working on all these initiatives.
All right. And you started to give your personal Twitter handle also?
Yeah, my
Before I cut you off.
personal X is Baywatch1. That's BEIWATCH1. I do have a couple imposters now, probably not as many as you, but there's a couple of fake accounts that they block you on X and then they use your tweets and they copy them. And so
And
everyone
then they start DMing people
Yeah.
with,
Yeah.
Send me links.
I don't
with
have enough
great
followers yet.
investment opportunities. So yeah.
I'm waiting to get to that level. So follow me. Maybe I'll also have some fake accounts.
Yeah. But yeah, Baywatch1 on X, and we're going to continue to work, proof of work. That's all we can do. And so we'll have updates there on all kinds of stuff. A bunch of unions will be announcing soon that they're going to add Bitcoin to the balance sheet, and they're doing initiatives. And I think there'll also be some pension news stuff that'll be fun coming out. So yeah.
Come visit Santa Monica. That's also the lasting message. People should come visit Santa Monica.
Yeah. And even though we don't have an office, I know, Lana, you have an office at City Hall. So Lana can always host visitors to come in.
Happy to do
I know we got a lot of inquiries on emails. There's probably some people listening that are like, I emailed and you guys got back to me and said stand by, but it's hard to, like, we're still building the infrastructure. So people go, we want to visit the office. I'm like, there's no office to visit. Or we want to help with this thing. We're going to put on this program. I'm like, there's no infrastructure to put that to work. But please keep reaching out and we'll find
these things take a while.
So for sure.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I appreciate you guys coming and spending the morning, and
us.
you have to get out there and enjoy the nice day at the beach here.
And I do want to say thank you for coming to surf here, for starting your work here, which led to the ripples of me coming down to surf, which led to played a huge part with my role in unions, pensions, the city of Santa Monica, and again to the viewer, never feel like your actions lack significance, because I'm sure at the time when you were coming out here doing this, you thought this would just be some thing that we'll laugh about at Thanksgiving dinner, and now you woke up and look at what's going on. It's insane globally, not just in El Salvador, globally. And so huge thank you to you, Mike, for taking that initial step and being a pioneer. It's unbelievable.
It's been a privilege to be on this wild ride. So
thank you.
awesome. So we'll have to revisit next year. Maybe after the conference, we'll make this a yearly thing. Get the updates for how things are progressing there in Santa Monica and with the work that you're doing with the union. So
for sure.
thank you guys.
Thank you guys.
Thanks.